Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. Time for another show. And school's closed. How do you like that? Yeah, the snow from yesterday, which is really, been largely taken care of, but we're a wacky county. As you know, Loudoun County, well, we got a diverse crowd here. And Western Loudoun County, as it turns out, I've learned this over the years from having school kids. Western Loudoun County, considerably more rural and more difficult to plow as a result, and more difficult to keep the roads clear and ready for kids to get picked up in school buses. Also, a lot of those more remote locations, you got kids waiting out for the bus, especially the elementary school kids, waiting out for the bus when it's still basically dark and it's icy and it's cold. And they got it in reverse here, the good way in this county, where the high school starts latest and the elementary school starts earliest. A lot of counties do it the traditional way, the other way around, which they found out recently, like about 1,000 years ago, that the teenagers need that extra hour of sleep in the morning much more than the little guys who get up to watch cartoons anyway. So they switched it around, but now you have the result being that the littlest kids are supposed to go out and wait for the bus in the freezing cold and the dark on a day like today, and they very frequently will cancel or delay the opening of school as a result of conditions in Western Loudoun, but the whole county as a whole closes. It's one big unit, and all the kids in the east where the roads have been plowed, who have been doing all the various superstitions that go along with trying to close school and get extra snow, like, let's see, there's flushing ice cubes down the toilet, wearing your pajamas inside out, there is sleeping with a spoon under your pillow. I never really, I was going to say, I don't understand that one. I don't really understand any of them. I guess there's some kid-like logic to flushing ice cubes down the toilet, like sending cold and ice into the universe to try to to freeze things up. I don't know what that does to the Boston monitoring of the fecal waste in the for keeping tabs on COVID, but if anything, I'm sure they'll let us know. Anyway, school's closed as a result, which is fine by me. I think the county probably taking advantage of the opportunity to close more often these days, blaming it on the snow just to kind of keep kids out of school and keep them from transmitting COVID, Omicron strain COVID, to one another for just another day. We'll get back to that, of course, in just a minute, but I needed to let you know, in case you didn't know what this nonsense going on in your ear was, the Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. And Bill tells us, all the way from Portland, Maine, that Kagro X, me, David Waldman, has good news. That's true. I have some. In addition to free masks and COVID tests, sounds like a good start. Starting tomorrow, the government may also send you an 80-pound tub of Daisy cottage cheese upon request, but only if you behave. I don't actually want the cottage cheese so much as I want that song to go on for hours and hours. Something we were watching yesterday, I don't know whether it was broadcast TV or one of the streaming services with commercials. You can't tell the difference anymore. But I wondered if it was a streaming thing because it was the same commercial over and over again. But then again, it's Daisy cottage cheese, and they might just be buying that much time. Their current jingle, well, I don't know what to tell you. Total earworm. That just sticks in your head or in your craw, depending on how you view it. And I just thought, like I said, a good torture for Senator Manchin to get him to change his mind about the filibuster might be to whether to park your car in the parking lot at the marina or get out there with the sound system on a kayak and pull up alongside his yacht/houseboat thing and play the Daisy Cottage Cheese jingle on an endless loop. There exists on YouTube a 3-minute loop of the whole thing in case you just can't get enough of the jingle. I don't know how the cottage cheese is, but we occasionally buy the sour cream. Seems pretty good. They're not paying for any sort of sponsorship or anything like that. There's another brand of cottage cheese that's fairly new. I don't know whether it's one of the old labels with a new name on it. But they picked a good name for it. It's good. It's called Good cottage cheese, and actually it was pretty good. So my thumbs up review for Good cottage cheese. I'm sure Daisy's fine too, and if you like singing the song, you can pick up a tub. I don't know if there are 80-pounders available these days, but it's entirely possible. But of course, all the shelves are bare, right? You know, the new pastime is to take pictures of the retail stores either when they're changing out stock for seasonal goods or these days taking pictures in advance of a snowstorm. Wow, you're kidding me. The bread and milk aisles are emptied out and toilet paper is mostly gone. There's no eggs, etc. Maybe all the canned soup even is missing all of a sudden. I've been watching this and watching people tweet those pictures around, and some of the people are pretty young, and I'm just sort of wondering, like, how long have you been doing your own shopping, son? Have you noticed that this happens during, I bet you never did shopping before for yourself before a snowstorm before. That's really not all that remarkable, but whatever. Anyway, that's the way it is, and that's it for the day. See you later. Cottage cheese, check. Groceries, all done. This morning, lots of chatter about, a number of things, including, just happened to walk in on, for one thing I saw was a video of an orangutan driving a golf cart, which I thought was amazing. And, easily mistakable for Donald Trump. That is true. I didn't think about that until just now. Both orange, both a little apish, kind of the same physical shape. Certainly the orangutan, as far as I know, could identify the difference probably between a zebra and an elephant just by pointing. So the mental acuity test, I'm just saying you could do just as well. And he would probably wear a mask at his rallies if you asked him to. Anyway, that was fun watching him drive a golf cart around. You can't beat that for morning entertainment. On the other hand, also some interesting discussion relevant to the, general news of the day. Just happened to pick up on Adam Johnson and his thread here, which I thought was kind of interesting. Who was the guy he was talking to here was responding to him initially. He was just noting school districts from Dallas to Kentucky to Wichita, and it goes on. There's more, like lots of twos going on here. Who's he talking to here? This thread has origins. Noah Rothman from MSNBC. Who's the first mover in this conversation? Oh my gosh, it goes back and back and back. Now we're back to Michael Brendan Doherty. What do we got here from him? It's a senior writer at NRO, the TFW, that feel well, right? Feel where it's the time of the evening where another day of school closure is announced after a week of sudden onset school closure. Yes. He's noticing the same trend here, and I guess we could talk about that in just a bit. And let's see, Noah Rothman from MSNBC answers, I'd be surprised if the rest of the country knows how much of Blue America's schools are still going periodically remote, just as I imagine much of Blue America doesn't know how bizarre that is to the rest of the country. I guess so. Some conversation between the right and the new emerging left anti-school closure gang, which are some interesting people, and I guess generally speaking, people who, I don't know, maybe have young kids and don't want them running around while they're working in their home offices or something like that. Adam Johnson jumping in at this point and saying, school districts from Dallas to Kentucky to Wichita to Kansas City, Oklahoma City, Mississippi, etc., were forced to go remote learning last week because of teacher shortages because of COVID. So I don't know about this whole blue coastal thing is basically what he's trying to say. It's not a blue state neurosis thing, despite what you've been told. And a response drawn there from Phil Kerpen. Who is Phil Kerpen? I don't know. Whatever. He's a dude. And he lists among his places the American, AmeriCom. American Commitment. That sounds like a fun place to be. And like Committee for Prosperity. So, one of those types of Republicans. And he begins arguing with Adam and saying there's a massive difference between scattered, brief staffing shortage closures and blanket weeks-long policy choice closures. And I don't really know what he's pointing to here, but he's got a map of school disruptions for the month of, so far, I guess, through January of this year. And indeed, they are pretty much all over the place. And it looks like in just about every state, with the exception of, let's see, I don't see any dots in Wyoming. I don't see any, I can't tell, actually. I got to get really close. No, I guess there are some in southern Maine as well. But otherwise, yeah, something somewhere in every, I guess literally every state except, there's Hawaii down there. They don't put them out in the ocean anymore. They put them down underneath Texas where they belong. Sure, why not? It's warm. Anyway, everybody else has had closures. Everybody. Maybe these closures lie outside the boundaries of Florida. I could see where Florida might decide to disallow closures, period, no matter how many teachers are short. And then if you got to fill in a class, call the orangutan with the golf cart and he'll come right over. Take an orangatuber over and join you. So I guess they didn't have any closures either. Yay, he's winning the pandemic. But anyway, yeah, this guy says, well, there's a massive difference between scattered brief outages due to staffing shortages and massive blanket weeks-long policy closures. But I don't know that that's actually necessarily the case. And Adam doesn't think so either, commenting, except there isn't massive difference, really, because they both stem from the same underlying problem. What if I told you the same conditions that, quote, briefly shut down schools because of staffing shortages are the same causing teachers to strike or sick out? Wild, I know. It's almost like they're related. And goes on to say, so many of these people wake up every day viscerally mad that teachers aren't robots. They want so bad to have robots. One would think the existence of scores of shutdowns because educators are, en masse, too sick or demoralized to show up would be evidence that unions preemptively asking for remote learning elsewhere may have some justified reason. But no, it's just evidence that they're lazy a-holes to these guys, right? And it's a great point, and he, continues on. Phil, of course, answers, no, it's not true. In multiple hellhole jurisdictions, we're still fighting the idea that proactive school closures is a COVID control measure. In New Jersey, a third of the kids in the state were locked out for 2 weeks at the start of the year. And, I don't know. He goes on and on for a while, and he says, today, weeks post-peak, Montgomery County executive is trying to impose a blanket school closure. It snowed here, guys. We had a snowstorm, and I guess he must be I wonder if he's in Montgomery County, and he wants his kids to go to school. That's, entirely possible. But, sometimes it snows, and sometimes if there's no teachers, if they're sick, we're in the middle of though we're on the downslope of it, still in a massive spike. We are way, way, way higher than most places in the country, and most places have been for months, and there's a lot of sick people. But he's angry because the robots haven't shown up to take care of his kids. I don't know what to tell you about that. I thought they were all for homeschooling, but now they're not. Anyway, yeah, I think Adams really pretty much got it right here. I know everybody's angry and upset, and they want, they say things like we want the schools open. But one, I don't. First of all, I do hold myself out as a little bit different, I guess, from everybody else. I don't know what the big deal is. My kids are older, so it's easier for me when they're home. That's fine. I accept that part of it. I also accept the part that, I don't know, everybody running around saying this pandemic's driving me crazy. I can't take the isolation and staying at home. I love it. It's fantastic. But, that's just me and a couple other people that I know that are dealing with it. Well, to me, it's okay. It's certainly fine. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. But I get to talk to all of you. We talk on Twitter and we interact. And quite honestly, I never liked going out anyplace anyway. So it was never really a huge deal. But, I don't know what to tell you. If teachers get sick, it's a big problem. And they can't come in. And pandemic or no pandemic, you were never in school. You never had a substitute, right, Phil? That never happened where a teacher just was sick and didn't show up. Or even 10 teachers are sick and didn't show up because the flu was going around. And, I know it upsets you, but these so-called week-long policy choice closures are about saying, well, look, we can either organize a plan and do the best we can and lay something out whereby we at least make the attempt at continuing to educate the kids with professional educators who are used to doing this and who now, by the way, have been pretty much thoroughly trained at holding classes remotely if necessary, and keep them at home so that they stay healthy, the classes keep going, the kids stay healthy, and it's not ideal. But the other version of it is let's all go in and we'll all start getting sick one by one or two by two or 10 by 10. Kids will miss class. A third of the class is absent. You don't know whether you should move ahead with your lesson plan. Doesn't matter anyway because now you have COVID. The sub isn't going to move ahead with your lesson plan. And if you have enough teachers out, you find that the result of keeping the schools quote unquote open is all the stories we've been hearing for the past week or two or three. The kids show up, they're herded into the auditorium for massive study halls where they spread COVID among themselves, and they watch movies. The subs come in and press play on a movie machine, on a DVD player or something, and everybody watches movies. Maybe they're educational movies, maybe they're not. They mill about, they take, might end up doing their work if there were any teachers around to assign any, and then in the meantime, they give each other COVID, and they give the substitute teachers COVID, and other school systems have to beg parents to come in. And parents can't come in because they're too busy posting messages on social media about how they want their kids in school. So where's all the content about anger over school closures going to come from if the kids have to stay home and you have to give them lunch? I don't know. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me, but I'd rather, if you're going to have that crisis, do it on a planned basis and have the people come out the other end healthy versus do it sporadically on an emergency basis. Maybe we're ready for it, maybe we aren't, plus everybody is sick for some period of time. Anyway, so here we are in Loudoun County, facing, I guess, some of the same pressures as Montgomery County, but we have our own particular set of problems here in Loudoun. They're taking advantage, as I said, of another snow day, and I think that might possibly stem from the news we shared yesterday that the new governor, Glenn Youngkin, has purported to, and I say it that way advisedly, and you know what I'm usually trying to frame as an issue when I say things this way. He's purportedly rescinded the statewide mask mandate for schools. A number of issues with the way he did it, of course, and even more issues with the basis upon which he says he did it. But the chief motivator for using purportedly here is, well, for one thing, he issued the executive order, and immediately, or more or less immediately, Arlington County schools, Fairfax County schools, the Richmond public schools, etc., a few others here and there, all announced, well, we're going to be ignoring that executive order for as long as we can anyway. And basically it's a see you in court sort of situation. If you can sue and successfully force us eventually to do that, that's fine. And honestly, everybody ought to do that and be open about it. And say, we think you're wrong. We might be wrong about thinking that you're wrong. But if you can force us to do it in court, that'll buy us at least a couple of weeks, if not a couple of months, and we'll be able to stay masked for hopefully as long as we need to for the Omicron strain to clear out. Maybe we won't get another powerful wave variant coming through, and maybe we can get out the back end of this thing defying you. Now, not every school district announced as much. Some more may intend to do it. Loudoun County, we had individual members of the school board say, well, I certainly think that masking should continue, and I will consider, the possibility that we might want to, push back or actually outright defy the rescission of the mask mandate. And there's some basis for it. The Virginia Constitution, with which I'm not, intimately familiar, although who's ever really intimately familiar with the Okay. Anyway, apparently is fairly explicit. I don't know how it's interpreted, but it seems fairly explicit by its terms in giving independent authority for running of local and county-based here in Virginia schools to the locally elected school boards. I'm sure that was actually something of a conservative measure. The idea being, turning it over to local officials, etc., is something that Republicans favor when there's a Democrat either in the White House or in the governor's mansion. And that occasionally comes back to bite them when they realize, gosh, we're just as authoritarian as we accuse anybody else of being. And when we come into office, people are going to end up defying our mandates or rescissions of mandates as well because of all the local control we've given to the schools. Because, of course, we listen to parents, etc. in the states. That's been the mantra for everybody, everywhere when they're discussing schools. But for whatever reason, nationally, people woke up to the fact that, running for, local, even statewide office is very often about localized issues. And you can do pretty well by saying anodyne things like, well, we're going to listen to parents and give them input into their children's education. Whether you mean by that we're going to burn books and force your kids to go to school without masks because the great orange orangutan guy says it smears his makeup and it's good for his image if nobody wears masks, whatever it is, occasionally, stuff like this backfires on you. So apparently there's a state constitutional question of whether or not the governor, in fact, is empowered to, certainly is empowered to rescind the mask mandate that was imposed by executive order by the previous governor. But in the meantime, there's also been legislation adopted by the previous General Assembly when Democrats held both houses and there was a Democratic governor, basically laying down as a matter of law, statutorily insisting that we follow CDC guidance and science on these things, which also might not have, it was well tailored to the times, but I don't know that it's always going to be a good fail-safe. Of course, you've seen what can happen to a CDC under a Republican idiot president, as with Donald Trump. But for now, that stands in the way, plus the constitutional problem that the governor might not have the power to impose. He can rescind the old mask mandate, but if a local school board imposes its own mask mandate, it's not entirely clear constitutionally that the governor holds the power to undo the local mandate. Now, he's, of course, looking for alternative ways to enforce it. He and the new lieutenant governor, Winsome Sears, announced or hinted the other day, I think he sent Sears out to do the announcing, so it's a hint from Youngkin, that they might be looking at ways to withhold state aid and state funding to county school systems that don't follow his lead and rescind their own mask orders or refuse to impose new mask orders in the wake of the rescission. So that should be interesting. It sets up an interesting situation in which the guy who ran on giving parents a choice and improving education and protecting kids in schools is going to be withholding funds that the school systems need to educate their kids because the school systems are actually trying to protect their kids from getting COVID. But, you knew what you were going to get when you voted for this guy. He's yet another guy who, I guess the comment circulating last night, he's put out the stupid line that Trump and every other person before him has said, well, I've never run a government agency, but I have some experience running a business, and it's a little bit similar, and I think we can run government more like a business. Everything will be fine. The businesses, of course, by the way, are staying masked and remote. Just thought I'd point that out. Anyway, in addition to all of this, there's another reason why I think Loudoun County might be gun shy about defying the masking order, and why they might be taking it slowly, and why they might be closing today and taking advantage of it. And the reason lies in another of the executive orders. I think there were 11 executive orders, like on his first day, Youngkin. And this one too might have some constitutional issues, not necessarily with the state constitution, but I have some doubts about the constitutionality of this. An executive order number 4 here, authorizing an investigation of Loudoun County public schools by the Attorney General. Now you tell me if you think we're going to get a fair and balanced, real, detached investigation here. By virtue of the authority vested in me and Governor, I hereby issue this executive order requesting the Attorney General conduct a full investigation into Loudoun County public schools. You know we were in the eye of the storm during the campaign, and you know why. Under the next section of importance of the issue, get this. This is a executive order. In the spring of 2021, the Loudoun County School Board and the administration of the Loudoun County Public Schools were made aware of a sexual assault, you know about it, that occurred in a Loudoun County high school. A decision was made to transfer the assailant to another Loudoun County high school, where the student was able to commit a second sexual assault. Question mark about able, but whatever. The Loudoun County School Board and school administrators, you ready for this? The Loudoun County School Board and school administrators withheld key details and knowingly lied to parents about the assaults. That's a little conclusory, I think. Neither the Loudoun County School Board nor the administrators of the Loudoun County school system have been held accountable for deceiving the very Virginians they serve. Very flighty as well. Virginia parents deserve answers and assurances that the safety of their children will never be compromised. And so basically, he goes out of his way to order the Attorney General to investigate and basically draw these conclusions. They definitely lied, and they definitely deceived everybody, and you definitely need to hold them accountable. That seems a little weird. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. So, what do you make of that? I thought that was an interesting approach, and you can see why the Loudoun County School Board might be a little jumpy about joining in right away with the other school districts where they have announced that they will be defying the governor's rescission order. The order doesn't have that much more to it. We can read all the way through the whole thing, as a matter of fact. The Attorney General authorization comes next by virtue of the authority vested in me by Section 2.2-511 of the Code of Virginia. I am requesting the Attorney General to initiate and coordinate investigative and prosecutorial efforts and to take such action as he may deem appropriate in order to protect the citizens of the Commonwealth and hold accountable any individuals who have violated existing law, which he insists must have happened, I assume, or violated the rights of victims of crime. I don't really think that they're going to get anywhere with that one in a normal situation, but in this situation, I guess the governor orders it. Now, on the national level, of course, it's still considered taboo for, well, I guess it was anyway before the Trump administration. And now that he's out and a Democrat is in, I guess it'll be taboo again for a president to order the Attorney General to take up any investigation at all. You know, you can kind of hint at it, and even that will draw, calls of foul for influencing the supposedly independent Department of Justice. But I guess on the state level, it's an accepted thing, or maybe it isn't, and he's just doing it, and we're all just used to it because that's what Trump does. And so all Republicans are going to do it from now on, and it's okay. But he's essentially ordered an investigation, plus given them a conclusion that they definitely lied and deceived people and failed to protect people, and you need to hold them accountable and just go do that. So the Loudoun County School Board, I'm sure, is a little bit nervous about that, and I don't know whether that colored their decision not to jump straight out and say, well, we're just not going to do it with the mask thing. Now, the county did send out a system-wide email from the superintendent, who was taking pains to point out that, the mask mandate rescission order doesn't become effective until the 24th, next Monday, which again, Youngkin, in his brief remarks about it, said, I'm giving you 8 days to get ready. Whereas I see it as I'm making trouble by saying I'm going to rescind the mask mandate, but it's not effective until the 24th. Like, why would that happen? If kids need to see other kids' smiles, don't they need to see them on the 18th of January? Well, they can't because the schools are closed because of snow, but not everywhere. But, aren't those smiles just as important on the 19th of January as they are on the 24th? But I think it was, at least the upshot of it is, it's going to cause more chaos. So the school superintendent here in Loudoun sent out a system-wide email saying, the mask mandate rescission doesn't become effective, if at all, until the 24th. We will be masked. There will be a mandate to wear your mask in the school buildings in Loudoun County until then, at least until then. So no indication of whether or not they're going to try and keep the mandate in place afterwards, like I said, like Arlington and Fairfax County and Richmond have said. And there have been a couple other jurisdictions that have joined in. In his comments, I think we may even have played his comments where Youngkin says, listen to parents, literally says it like 5 times in a minute and a half, listen to parents. His conclusion, by the way, that the fact that these school systems announced almost immediately upon the release of his executive order that they would be defying the order and keeping their own mask mandates, he says their reaction without, even bothering to consult with anybody is it goes to show that they're still not listening to parents and they still don't get the message. I said listen to parents and I won the election. And therefore, you should be listening to, I guess, the same parents. Basically, I want you to listen to parents in diners who are busy, when they're not busy explaining to reporters why they still support Trump, they will tell you when they're done why they support Youngkin and the rescission of the mask mandate. Those are the parents you should be listening to. It would never occur to him that, look, you won the election, allegedly, back in November, and it's now been, 2.5 months, and we all knew you were going to be governor. We all knew what you were likely to do when you got there, even though there were, I guess, a lot of people who wasted that 2.5 months sitting around saying, well, he's not like Trump. You see, he wears a vest. He's a friendly guy. He's just, conservative, but, anyway, you're all proven wrong, of course, and we knew you would be. But we all knew that this was coming. And we all knew what Omicron demanded of us, and we've been consulting with one another, and I'm sure that the school boards in these places have been consulting with parents all along. And some places, parents overwhelmingly agree and want the mask mandates rescinded. And in fact, in some places, they overwhelmingly agree and they want there to be a mandate against masks. But in other places, consulting with parents, that's their business, will yield something quite different. Like, for instance, maybe, it was just political speech, but the rebuttal to it is, fairly serious and deserves some attention. He says the fact that they reacted immediately means they still haven't agreed to listen to parents. But in Fairfax, in Arlington, in Richmond, listening to parents will get you a very different message. I mean, we did have a statewide contest where we measured the results by asking everybody to go to the ballot box and submit some sort of voucher that would declare one way or the other, are you for the guy who says we should be rescinding mask mandates or the other guy? Listen to parents. Well, I mean, parents spoke in the election in November. Youngkin, I've told you here, even in Loudoun County, I've been doing it by way of defending the reputation, to the extent I'm interested in doing so, of Loudoun County, just because it was the centerpiece of the election and they showed all the pictures and video of angry parents, etc. I mean, there was a big swing, I guess, here in a way, but not huge, really, honestly. Youngkin lost Loudoun County by 11 points. It's like 55-44 for McAuliffe. 55% McAuliffe, 44% Youngkin. That's an 11-point difference. That's fairly significant, especially on a county you've been making such a focal point and you did all these rallies here. It was all over the TV, and the country got the impression that Loudoun County was swinging hard right, and they didn't. They lost. He shaved a couple points off of prior performance. Even Biden's performance, I think, who might have been near 20 points difference in Loudoun County. But it's still a fairly significant margin of victory. Now, his criticism, of course, was, well, the places where they are saying now openly that they're going to defy my order, they haven't been listening to parents either. Well, again, when we last measured it, Youngkin lost Arlington County by 54 points. That's a lot. He lost Fairfax County by 30 points. He lost Richmond City, where it's not Richmond County. There's a difference, and it's not, and Richmond isn't even in Richmond County, I don't think. But maybe I have their anyway. Richmond City, where the schools say they will be defying the mask mandate rescission, he lost by 58 points. We're talking about gigantic margins. Listening to parents, you don't have to stay with your ear to the ground very long to find out what parents say in places where you lose by 30 to 60 points. But, whatever. He gave the soundbite, so they played the soundbite on TV. They haven't been listening to parents. They're in the business of listening to parents. You would like to be in that business. You've just kind of sort of gotten into it. And I don't even know whether the one-term limit governor can even be said to be listening to anybody. But at any rate, I just thought that was kind of important to point out to people. But there you go. He's issued an executive order. And if you disagree with it, you don't count as a parent. That's just the way it is for these guys. Anyway, I thought that was important. And now the extra intimidation for Loudoun County basically means that my son gets to go back to school. If they won't stand up with the other counties where Youngkin and his policies were overwhelmingly rejected, despite the specific focus on Loudoun County, then my son gets to go back to a school where masks are optional. I don't even know what the upshot of this rescission is supposed to be. And by the way, I haven't seen it. Maybe I'm not paying a great deal of attention to everything that Youngkin says, but I am curious to know whether anybody has seen. I think he's got, if he wants to set himself apart from Trump at all, I think he's got a specific responsibility here to remind everybody, yes, look, as a matter of policy, I think it was the wise thing to do. He's wrong. To rescind the statewide mask mandate for schools. But more than that, he should have said, well, I'm going to leave it up to the localities, but he doesn't want to do that because gimmitarianism. But he can still say, I'll leave it up to individuals. And I think that's still supposed to be the fallback intention of this thing, and say, well, you can wear a mask if you want to. But if parents decide that it's best for their kids not to wear the mask. By the way, don't ask any of the kids. I think basically middle school and up, you should say, ask them. Really, honestly, ask any kids. Do you want to wear the mask? I mean, I don't know why you can't ask a grade school kid that. But whatever. Anyway, I guess it's supposed to be individual choice. But it would be like if he really were interested in, governing even close to fairly and not doing this as a revenge thing of some kind, he would say, it's important that everybody remember, by the way, I'm giving you individual choice. And that includes the individual choice to continue to wear a mask. There are reasons to do it. Not everyone agrees that it's the best course of action, and I would like to make available to people who don't think it's the best course of action for themselves the opportunity to do something about that. I mean, that's dumb and anti-science or whatever, but I want to do that. I'm making an honest mistake here. But what it doesn't mean is that nobody can wear a mask or that you should harass people who do wear a mask or try to remove their masks or anything like that, which I assume is coming next. Because, of course, there's a significant portion of the anti-maskers who insist that there's some incredible damage being done by the fact that their kids can't see other kids' smiles. I never thought that they were such softies on the right wing like this. The hard-ass conservatives. I was in the Marines for 25,000 years in 17 different countries. You got to listen to me. I know what's that. Kids need smiles. What? I mean, I get the idea, but that sounds sort of like, I don't know whether that was designed to appeal to left-wing people. Like, kids really do need to see smiles, just like they need to see rainbows and unicorns. I don't know. That's supposed to be leftist, I guess. But I just never heard of anybody, I guess, except for the men who run around and say, women should smile more. I guess that is I'm familiar with. But, yeah, the idea that kids need to see one another smile. Like, I don't know. But apparently that's very important to them. And I guess at some level, you'll find people that are saying, well, it was never about the fact that I didn't want to wear a mask myself. It was about seeing other people's smiles and giving them the individual freedom to choose whether or not to mask. Robs me of my right to their smile, I guess. Eventually you'll see that. Plus, of course, you'll see just, jerks and bullies pulling the masks off of other people generally. So anyway. Yes, it's very much on my mind, and will remain an issue here in Loudoun County, and I guess throughout Virginia for quite some time to come. All right, well, it wasn't the plan to spend the whole day on that, but I certainly feel like we could go on. And I wanted you to keep an eye on this other executive order just because of the weird nature of it, this idea that you can order the Attorney General to find some people guilty by directing them to do so is a little shaky. I don't know how well that's going to hold up. All right, other issues and stories to share with you. Here's something that Scott sent me yesterday, and I got it was too late. I was exercised over other things for too long at that point. ABC News reporting this interesting tidbit. Because of our mention of the really let's say, not super smart guy from southwestern Virginia who's now a freshman legislator, Ren Williams, the guy who added Frederick to the Lincoln-Douglas debates in his bill. This is his neck of the woods that we're dealing with. And so Scott said, this is the kind of constituency you're dealing with. I think I've heard this story before, but not in the context of, oh yeah, well, this is where Ren Williams is coming from. Cops' role, the role of two cops here, in the January 6th attacks divides Virginia town with ties to Confederacy. All Virginia towns have ties to the Confederacy, of course. Virginians were Confederates. Regrettable as that is, and as Northified and gentrified, I guess is the word you would usually use, but as Northified as Northern Virginia is, yes, that's the reality of what it was. Well, that was a civil war. Virginia seceded. That's the end of it. So where are we talking about? We're talking about Rocky Mount, Virginia, which drivers of the I-95 corridor will recognize as, oh yeah, I saw the name of that town on a sign. It's not a huge destination, although You may have stayed at Rocky Mount at some point in your drive up and down 95, I think, right? Because it's big on the signs. And I think it's got lots of hotels. Or is that Rocky Mount, North Carolina, on the other side of the... I don't know. There may be several Rocky Mounts now, and I might be becoming confused about that. Let's take a... Well, I don't know. Should we take a look at the map here? Why not? And then I'll tell you the story of what's going on there, although you got the idea. The local cops, Rocky Mount, there's a Rocky Mount, Virginia, and a Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Rocky Mount, North Carolina is the one that's on 95, and Rocky Mount, Virginia, I was just talking about it being in, what's his name, Ren Williams area. That is considerably further west, more toward Roanoke. Rocky Mount, North Carolina is right across the border from Virginia on I-95, and is a place where you might stop if you say, well, I'll just drive until we get across the border here. Yeah, there's in fact a text just now from my mom reminding us that Rocky Mount is in North Carolina. Well, no, it isn't, Mom. Rocky Mount is in Virginia. There's another Rocky Mount that stole the name. Those North Carolinians stole the name from the original Rocky Mount, Virginia, which we know because, I don't know. I made it up, and I don't know. Do I have that much Virginia pride that I really want to stand by it? Anyway, in Rocky Mount, Virginia, something else has happened. In Rocky Mount, North Carolina, you might stay there in a hotel because you're driving on 95. Your other option, I think, if you're driving the other way or you don't want to get across the Virginia border for some reason, is Emporia, Virginia, that area. But to the west, by how much? Should we find out what is the distance between the two Rocky Mounts? Why not? Just for fun. Rocky Mount, Virginia, and Rocky Mount, North Carolina are, according to Google, 189 miles or so apart, along the fastest route. And it will take you about 3 hours and 20 minutes to get between the two at this point in time. So anyway, in the other Rocky Mount, the sleepier, I guess, Rocky Mount, Virginia, two of the local constabulary, two members of the local constabulary, apparently well-known and well-respected, in fact, members of the constabulary, decided to participate in the January 6th riot, which seems like a bad choice for people in law enforcement, but they weren't alone by any means. But the story of Rocky Mount, because it's also the story of Ren Williams, is that two of the three active police officers charged for January 6th are from this tiny little, I guess, town of Rocky Mount. Well, now we got to look up the demographics of Rocky Mount. Rocky Mount, Virginia population, because I may have like shortchanged them into the sleepy little, 4,745. That's a fairly, I mean, as southwestern Virginia towns go, it's sizable, but as you know, compared to the elite blue cities where they're afraid of COVID, quite small. So what's going on there? The cops went to the January 6th riot. I'm sure they didn't know it was going to be a riot until they got there, but they went inside. They took selfies of themselves, of course, inside the Capitol. So that wasn't very wise. The ABC News report reads this way: a year after a violent mob stormed the U.S. Capitol 260 miles away, a quiet community in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains is still reckoning with the fallout and ties to its Confederate past and conservative politics. Okay, sure, why not? Rocky Mount, and I think, oh yeah, there you go. In the video, must be what caught Scott's eyes. In the video accompanying the piece, it's ABC News, and so they embed video. There's Ren Williams himself making an appearance in the piece. I wonder what he has to say about this, because, well, who knows? He might be defending their behavior. He's listed here, though the report is filed on January 4th, as Virginia House of Delegates, 9th District. He isn't at this point. He had not yet been sworn in, but whatever, you could forgive them that error. Should I? Yeah, it is on Pocket, although it's like 5 minutes into the 7-minute piece. But anyway, he makes an appearance in here. And Rocky Mount, which is predominantly white and staunchly Republican, was thrust into the national spotlight on January 6th after 2 of its active police officers were spotted among the crowd rampaging through the halls of Congress. Jacob Fracker, that's a great name to have these days as a conservative, and Thomas Robertson, both military veterans, of course, are among the 17 current or former law enforcement officers charged by federal authorities for alleged participation in the riot, according to an an ABC News tally. Why I default to NBC, I don't know. But they say 17. Why does it say in the subhead here, 2 of 3 active police officers? Is that 3? They have 3 active police officers in Rocky Mount, and 2 of them were there? Is that what they're trying to say? Let's see. We'll go on here. They needed to be exposed because it's not only just them, they're just the body of the evil here. Wow. Said Rocky Mount native Bridget Craighead, a small business owner, Black Lives Matter activist, and former candidate for state delegate. I guess I don't know whether she lost to Ren Williams or somebody else. I don't know how long ago she ran. While the passions poured out at the Capitol surprised few, interesting, and have long since subsided. Wow. Many residents say the high-profile alleged involvement of 2 of their neighbors continues to roil the close-knit town. That's how you know it's a small one. It's close-knit. And by the way, that's some conclusory language there, too. The passion surprised few. Okay, I guess it didn't surprise anybody in Rocky Mount. They all wanted to go to the riot and have long since subsided. Not here. Anyway, everyone I've talked to was totally shocked that these 2 men would do that, said Carol Yopp, a local artist and informal Rocky Mount historian. In fact, I've never heard anyone say that they applaud them, whether they agreed with what was happening or not. Maybe that's what Ren was doing in the video. Anyway, it was 7 months before the riot that Fracker and Robertson were celebrated by local African-American residents for standing in solidarity with demonstrators at the town's first protest for Black Lives Matter. Cell phone video even shows the cops holding signs for racial justice and dancing the electric slide with organizers. They could have been, of course, just doing whatever it was they felt like doing to get along. They could have been sincere. They could have been insincere. I guess you really don't know. And I guess it's entirely possible that you can hold some set of beliefs that includes both the right of Black Lives Matter's protesters to lodge their protest, or even you might even agree with them and somehow still think the election was stolen. I guess anything's possible in a world where people are eating horse paste and drinking their own pee. And not only drinking it, by the way, something else that Scott sent the other day indicates that they are doing... Oh, no, I'm sorry. It wasn't Scott that sent this one. It was Travis that had sent this one, who said, showing the various other things, including, I don't know how they're doing it exactly, but they're capturing their own pee in a bottle, that I understand, but pouring it up their noses. To what end, I don't know, like neti potting with their own pee, snorting it up in small droplets. That sounds extraordinarily dangerous, but, who knows. Anyway, the story goes on here, and it's not necessary that we read the entirety of it. I mean, I think you all get the point. It's a small town, mostly white, significant minority black population, as is the case in many southern towns. The white cops, friendly enough at one point, then went to the riot, and some white people are good with it, and some are not so great with it, and black people are kind of like, what the hell's wrong with you? And upset about it, and I think they're the ones who are right in all of this. Well, anyway, of course, this is a place with a Confederate statue still in front of Town Hall, or I don't know if it's the county seat or anything. Maybe if it has the county courthouse, it has it in front of there. Here's Ren Williams mentioned in the body of the piece here. Town voters last fall broke heavily for pro-Trump Republican Glenn Youngkin for governor in a campaign dominated by debate over critical race theory. The town also tapped a new, more conservative representative to the State House of Delegates, a former member of Trump's 2020 legal team. How do you like that? Who fought the election results. Ren Williams. I had no idea that that's what he did, because on his website, his campaign website, he's a rancher, farmer kind of a guy. He's got a cowboy hat and a pickup truck, and he's carrying sheep and pigs around or whatever, or calves, and making out to be like a big farmer guy. But now he's also part of the Trump 2020 legal team, and sharp enough to be both a practicing attorney and a guy who mistook Stephen Douglas for Frederick Douglass. And they don't look anything alike. Well, anyway. Oh, look at this. There's one additional quote here. Church and God is a big thing for us. History. I love that he mentions history in particular. History. We're steeped in history. And we feel as though people who don't understand our way of life, or they don't resonate or connect with us. What is that? Where did the syntax go on that one? We're steeped in history. You're not. You think Frederick Douglass debated Abraham Lincoln. And we feel as though people who don't understand our way of life, and it's like it's from an alien planet. We know your way of life. It's just regular life, but smaller town and grits. What's the difference? Anyway, and by the way, that's a unifying message. You're not that different. Okay. We feel as though people don't understand our way of life, or they don't resonate or connect with us. Yeah, I don't resonate or connect with that sentence. We're steeped in history. Church and God are big. Good, fine, terrific. Understand what you're saying. I think he's trying to say we feel as though people don't. I think the who is superfluous there. Now it makes some sense. We feel as though people don't understand our way of life, or they don't resonate or connect with us, I guess is what he's trying to say. Williams said of his landslide victory against Craighead in November, what is it that we don't understand or resonate with? You won the election, and you're the guy who will be in the House of Delegates. Anyway. Williams said he condemns the events of January 6th as a riot, and that's a step forward. Oh, I'm a couple seconds behind on the music here. But that his constituents are not fixated on what he considers a small group of lawbreakers. Go out into these small towns and actually see if anybody is talking about January 6th anymore, because they're not. They're not discussing it, he said. Well, they should be discussing it in Rocky Mount because, well, unlike other neighboring towns, it was their police force that was doing it. And you say it was a riot. Isn't that a bad thing? Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. There's a little bit left. We skipped a significant chunk of the article, but I think we're hitting the parts we need to. There's even a little bit more, as a matter of fact, to just give you a feel for what's going on. They did talk to a nice cross section of people. Both sides. They both sides this, as they would have to. And the town, you can't not represent the pro-Trump view in a town that's so pro-Trump. I'm glad they sought out minorities, and by that I mean the minority of people who supported Democratic candidates. Though there were at least a few African Americans that they did seek out and speak to, and I guess they had to. It would be a huge mistake, of course, not to, for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that, as they mentioned, the candidate that Ren Williams defeated is the Black Lives Matter activist and small business owner, Ms. Craighead, who's also quoted extensively in the piece. Maybe, I don't know, just in fairness, I should go back and see what she had to say about these things. She had said, of course, I am making allowances for the possibility that you could keep both sets of beliefs in your head, just not logically consistently. But she's less patient than that, and she's probably right. I don't see how you can support Black Lives Matter, but then support the insurrection of the Capitol, Craighead said, citing insurrection at the Capitol, would have been better, true, citing elements of racism and white power in the events that day. Yeah. It was all over it. You're actually quite right about that. It's also hypocritical. You want us to be peaceful protesting, but then you go be part of a riot that was not so peaceful. That is a great point as well. Let's see. Others, Robertson, I guess, is one of the cops, wrote on Instagram that the men attacked the government, and he said that, attack the government, to stand up for their rights, according to federal court documents. Fracker posted on Facebook, I can protest for what I believe in. Sure, you can, but, mind you that, I'm just thinking about, Craighead's right here, the pains that I would guess the local community, the black community there, and their supporters had to go to make sure that it wasn't possible to credibly accuse them of being anything but peaceful protesters. I mean, I think that there's an awful lot of leeway that they could have ordinarily, they ordinarily could have had before anybody reasonable would have called them violent protesters. But, cops are itchy about these things. And when they're sent to patrol, particularly Black Lives Matter movement, not just because it's generally speaking, largely black movement and cops to a great extent still continue to fear encounters with black Americans for, not such great reasons, considering that they usually go into them armed and wearing bulletproof vests, etc. But, I understand what they think is the history of interactions with black criminal suspects. Why that carries over to everyone who's black, well, that can only be solved on a psychiatrist's couch, and we can't do that here. But, we're considering the advantage that we give them in these encounters. I think, I have questions about their fears. But at any rate, it's interesting that for them, I can protest for what I believe in. Yeah, you can. It's a simple statement. They can protest for what they believe in too, and they should be able to do it without you hanging over their shoulder, making sure that they don't step 1 foot off the sidewalk and get arrested for jaywalking. Just, this would be a good opportunity, a learning opportunity. Anyway, Craighead led calls to get the officers fired, which in turn made her a target of their supporters. So now tensions rising in the town. So we skipped down at that point down to Ren Williams, because we caught a sight of his face and a mention of his name, and we were mad at him and wanted to say more rotten things about him. So where were we here? I think we left off both now former officers. I guess they have been fired, and I don't know whether it was Craighead's lead for that or whether they were like, we can't really have rioters in our department here. Both now have pleaded not guilty to federal charges of disorderly and disruptive conduct and obstruction of Congress. Ooh, they got those charges. In local media interviews, the men have insisted that they didn't participate in violence and that their message is not incompatible with support for Black lives. Trial dates have not been set. They were both very polite gentlemen, and they were both town police officers. However, it is unfortunate that they are no longer employees of the town, said J. Tyler Lee, a town councilman and friend of the former officers. So he might actually mean that. It's unfortunate that they're no longer officers. I was like, that's the sort of thing that you might say and think you were saying, but unfortunately we've had to turn them into former officers because of what they did, as opposed to, I think it was the wrong decision, and it's an unfortunate one. Lee, who at 29 is the youngest person ever elected to Rocky Mount government, has been urging his neighbors for the past year to turn the page. Just please put it behind you. I think we have to leave the stuff a year ago, Lee said, because if we keep bringing up what happened a year ago, it's still going to keep punching us in the mouth. If we can just teach compassion, communication, and how to balance a checkbook, those 3 things, I think you're golden. Yeah, well, that's all you really need in life, honestly. Just compassion, communication, and apparently checkbooks. And I know you're a fiscal conservative, you got to say something like that. You want to throw that in there. I like that, though. We leave stuff a year ago, and leave things 160 years ago, 160 years ago. Stop refighting the Civil War. I mean, come on, all these statues. Just leave the stuff. Everyone knows history is meant to be forgotten, unless it's not. If it's about white people and people I was told were heroes, then we got to remember that forever. And if it's embarrassing, well, then just leave it. It's, historians, Gimme-tarian historian here. By many accounts, healing has been going slow, and beneath the surface in Rocky Mount, emotions are still raw. People like to fantasize, I call it, saying, it's a good old southern town, and all the families get along, and everybody's happy, etc. And I call that the fantasy, said Franklin County School Board member and Rocky Mount native Penny Blue. Blue, who has led a campaign against the town's Confederate monuments and symbols, because leave it in the past, right? Just leave it. Considers the riot an extension of painful divisions over race, history, and politics that date to the Civil War, and probably before. It was an insurrection, and that's what the Confederates did. It was an insurrection, Blue said in an interview beside the town's monument to the Confederate dead, newly erected, by the way, in what year? Can anybody guess? Anybody want to offer a guess? Shout loud, because you're in another town. Can't hear you. 2010. Well, it's an ancient monument, and we're honoring it not only because it honors the Confederate dead, but it was placed here by our own ancestors last week. And, 2010. By the way, after an older version was damaged. Well, you can't have it damaged and repaired or anything like that, and we're going to put up a brand new one so people never forget, because history is super important, unless it's last year. Trump did not radicalize these people, she added of the rioters. He took advantage of what was already here in Franklin County and America. The influence of Donald Trump is already shaping Rocky Mount's next chapter. Town voters last fall broke heavily for pro-Trump Republican Glenn Youngkin for governor, and a campaign dominated by debate over critical race theory. That's what I told you about as we were introducing the part about Ren Williams, right? While Williams, by the way, is convinced that Trump will run for president again in 2024, others in the community wait anxiously for word of the former president's intentions. The omnipresence of Trump is complicating a path forward, some residents say. If you have any hope of healing, you've got to talk about what's hurting. Who's that? Well, it's Rocky Mount United Methodist Church pastor Will Waller. And remember, Will Wren said church and God are huge here, right? You got to be into church and God. The church says, if you have any hope of healing, you got to talk about what's hurting. Wren says, not that church. I meant another one. Different one that I go to. Anyway, this church pastor says, I tend to believe honesty is the best policy, so ripping off the Band-Aid is the best way to move forward. We'll talk about it. We're unafraid here, and I hope that a lot of them are. A willingness to keep talking to each other was one of the few areas of common ground expressed by Rocky Mount residents on both sides of the political divide. We bringing up all these hurtful topics and subjects, we are, I think, not to rub it in your face and bring up the past, said Craighead, but we have to bring up the past to learn from it, to move on and to heal, as opposed to the other guy who says, no, you got to leave it. Lee agreed that respectful dialogue is essential. At the end of the day, we all may disagree, but you still have to be able to stick your hand out and face it as a champ. That is deep and meaningful. That's a 29-year-old's opinion on it for you. Caught in the logical trap of his own making when they were pointed out, no, actually, we really need to be able to talk about what happened in order to move past it, if that's what you want to do. Oh, all right, I will admit that, but you got to be a champ somehow. Waller, the pastor, said faith also has a role to play. Remember that Wren said it did too. To grow some flowers, you got to disturb the dirt. This has been a disturbing year, just like 2020 was, but I believe in growth, and it comes through sometimes seeing things messed up for a bit, he said. That's maybe one of the less eloquent pastors I've run into in the past, but he's talking politics. Could be difficult. Anyway, thanks to Scott for sending that one along. And as I mentioned earlier, no thanks to Travis for sending me the disgusting story of all the people who are peeing on themselves, drinking their own urine, and sticking it up their nose. But it is happening. I can share that thread with you in the roundup more than anything else. But yeah, Ryan Graney, Graney, tweets this thread in which, if I can identify the picture correctly, I better look for pronouns here. Let's see. Any pronouns offered? No? Then it's up to me and I get to choose or guess. Ryan Graney, she says, friends, I have joined the urine therapy Facebook groups to find out what they're up to. And yuck, you won't believe it. But the things, I mean, once the topic is broached and it's, what should I be doing with my pee in the morning? Well, goodness gracious. It's just bad news, generally speaking. They're debating the various topics of, is your first morning pee the best one to use? Should you, drink the first bit of it? Or some people will say, well, no, wait for mid-pee it's gross. And then, anyway, there's a picture of a guy who pees in a little tiny bottle and sticks it up his nose for some reason. And honestly, even without the bottle of pee in his nose, he doesn't look like a kind of guy you should trust for your medical information. But, anyway, look, my view of this is unproven. Don't use pee for stuff. It's waste. But I don't know. Somebody somewhere get the idea that it was a great idea. I mean, there's recycling and there's recycling. You know what I'm saying? This is not one that I think is going to do you a great deal of good, to say the least. But that'll keep me out of the YouTube censor algorithm, I think, right? We can move on from there. Here's another bit of news. A little bit obscure, but I guess good news. So we'll share that. From the Washington Post, Biden White House forces resignation of former Trump aide who promoted baseless January 6th theories. Sometimes you forget how many people were embedded in government. It was a big story, of course, but you forget. Well, of course, the Biden White House would force the resignation of a former Trump aide. Get out of here. Trump's gone. You're gone, too. A lot of people got embedded in protected jobs that are still there, only some of which are critical jobs that can really do some major damage on the surface. A lot of things that can, though, influence how, well, you know how government works. There are levers everywhere, and a lot of them are hidden. And you got to root everybody out. Well, you should be getting rid of all Trumpers because they were all illegitimate to begin with. These Trumpers, this particular one is among several mentioned in his story. The subheader explains, the Biden administration on Friday forced out Darren Beattie, Beattie, who was a member of the U.S. Commission for the Preservation of America's Heritage Abroad, along with 6 other members appointed by Trump. Not really sure why we have that commission. Somebody thought it was a great idea at some point. I don't even know. Maybe it was Trump's invention. Got no idea. It doesn't sound like the mission is all that clear to me, but looks can be deceiving on the surface of these things. Mariana Alfaro has reported this for the Washington Post. The Biden White House has forced the resignation of a Trump-appointed member of a U.S. commission who has promoted the baseless claim that the FBI planted agents among the pro-Trump mob that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Darren Beattie, maybe he's Beatty, I don't know, like the actor, was named by former President Donald Trump to the U.S. Commission for the Preservation of America's Heritage Abroad in November 2020. After Trump had lost. In a letter Friday, Gautam Raghavan, I don't know how he pronounces that, but it's Raghavan, Gautam Raghavan, Deputy Director of the White House Office of Presidential Personnel, so I better learn how to pronounce the name at some point, told Beattie that and I don't know how to pronounce that either, Beattie, that he must turn in his resignation by the end of business Friday, and if he did not, his position would be terminated. A spokesman for the White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Beattie confirmed the White House's letter in a Friday afternoon tweet, saying the request for his resignation was, quote, better than a Pulitzer. I'm not really sure why or whether he knows what a Pulitzer is, but you've been fired by better people than this, commented Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida, an outspoken conservative. That's one way of putting it. And I did see somebody summarizing this situation on Twitter by saying, you don't know who this is, basically, who got fired, but Matt Gaetz is upset. So you know what to do with that. As a member of the commission, Beatty was serving a 3-year term and would have had the option of retaining his post until replaced. Members of the commission aren't paid for their service. The White House move comes days after Beatty's actions as a right-wing blogger attracted attention from the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack. The panel dismissed the unsupported claim that the FBI helped to incite the insurrection, a theory perpetuated by right-wing media and some Republicans looking to absolve the pro-Trump mob that attacked the building. The committee's statement came after it interviewed Ray Epps, an Arizona man who encouraged others to break into the Capitol on January 5th and was seen on the Capitol grounds the day of the attack. In the interview with the committee, Epps denied any involvement with the FBI or any other law enforcement agency. Beatty runs a right-wing site that, in 2 separate posts, claims that Epps was hired by the FBI to agitate the pro-Trump mob. Republican lawmakers opposed to the January 6th investigation, including Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, picked up the baseless theory and began peddling it along with Fox News host Tucker Carlson. Beatty was put on the board of the commission, whose main role is to preserve monuments in Europe, many honoring Holocaust victims, after he was fired from the Trump White House for attending a conference frequented by white nationalists. So there you go. That's who he is and why he's of some importance. So he was working at the White House, went to a white nationalist conference. I don't remember which one. We could look it up by clicking. And he got himself fired. He's somebody who the Trump White House could not defend as a white supremacist. Booted him, but then on the way out the door in November 2020, Trump sticks him on some stupid commission somewhere, but he's not getting paid. But how annoying is it that the white nationalist guy who got fired is on the board whose main role is to preserve monuments in Europe, many honoring Holocaust victims? That's why they threw that in there. In 2018, CNN reported that Beatty had spoken during the 2016 H.L. Mencken Club Conference, an annual gathering that is regularly attended by white nationalists such as Richard Spencer, the punchable Nazi. Remember the dapper Nazi who got decked? Anyway, before that, Beatty served as one of Trump's speechwriters. So great. On Sunday, the former president issued a statement praising Beatty for pushing his baseless claims about January 6th, when the pro-Trump mob invaded the Capitol to stop the affirmation of Joe Biden's Electoral College win and attacked the left 5 dead. You know all about it. Because of Darren's work and others, Americans aren't buying into the unselect committees. I love that he thinks that's a great insult. The select committee. No, it's the unselect committee. The unselect committee's attempts to smear 75 million plus, that says that in parentheses, plus, exclamation point, 75 million plus Americans, Trump said, in an apparent reference to his 2020 voters, or his 2020 loss, would be a good way of saying it. He received about 74 million votes, by the way, not 75. Biden got about 81 million because he won. 6 other members appointed to the commission by Trump were also asked to resign, including Commission Chair Paul Packer, conservative activist Julie Strauss, New York Planning Commissioner Joseph Doak, and attorney Mark Levinson. Oh, gross. Anyway, I wonder about New York Planning Commissioner Joseph Doak. I wonder if he's like a guy who kept approving Trump real estate projects in the bidet or whatever. Late Friday, the White House announced new appointments to replace the 7 departing members, as well as the Board for the International Food and Agriculture Development. Former New York City homicide prosecutor turned Emmy Award-nominated TV host Star Jones was named chair of the commission. That sounds like an upgrade. Others named to the board include William H. Shaheen, husband of New Hampshire Senator Jeanne Shaheen, and Nancy K. Kaufman, former CEO of the National Council of Jewish Women. So, again, another upgrade. Good news. Small bore story, but well worth pointing out. And then, of course, you know, the exciting part, which was, white supremacist Nazi guy. It's good. Glad Glad he's gone. Okay, let's see. Other things that we could/should squeeze in here. Today being Tuesday, of course, coming up on our third break, and that's got me thinking about Joan McCarter stopping by for a visit. And, of course, today, yesterday being Martin Luther King Day, was originally the target date, like actually the drop-dead date for the big filibuster showdown, whatever it was going to be about and whatever the results were going to be and whether we knew them ahead of time or not. Over voting rights, of course, and an attempt to push past the filibuster in one way or another, however engineered. And then it got delayed. It got pushed off. By last week, it was pretty clear that it wasn't going to happen by Monday, which is kind of anticlimactic and all of that. But, as you know, the whole point, behind this is it's a very closely divided Senate. It is 50-50, and when it's that close and you got Democratic senators coming down with COVID, which was the case, I think, with Brian Schatz, right, from Hawaii, you got to wait until you're at full strength to do anything. So I just happen to have this tweet tucked away from last week. Was it Friday? Was that the 14th? Yeah, I think so. Sahil Kapoor tweeting and then linking to an NBC News article about it. Saying the Senate is delaying and I think he's right, largely. Parenthetically, he adds a doomed vote to change filibuster rules to pass voting rights legislation. It's pushed to Tuesday after a Dem senator got COVID. Sinema and Manchin appear immovable. A reminder of the limits of Dem power in this trifecta, I guess, is contained in the NBC News article. And I don't know if there's anything to be discovered in there, but I just put the tweet away to remind us that, so they pushed it to Tuesday. Today is that Tuesday. So, we'll probably give that some discussion and see whether there's anything new that has developed over the weekend that I haven't noticed. I don't think they've done anything different. I don't know whether any negotiations continued. I thought it was a good idea for a while to possibly try to engineer something whereby you could convince Manchin and Sinema that they weren't really voting to undo anything about the filibuster just by voting, say, to table an appeal from McConnell or any other Republicans to overrule or to overturn the ruling of the chair with respect to whether or not, say, they engineer it this way, cloture could be invoked by majority vote because of the nature of the underlying bill being about voting rights. But I don't think that they were, I had my doubts about whether or not they were going to be willing to entertain that possibility. Now, this one they see very clearly, but the other one, the other carve out, anyway, that was really Republicans deciding to pull the wool over their own eyes over that one. I don't think everyone was pointing out, Manchin and Sinema both voted for the carve out for the debt ceiling, but they both wanted to raise the debt ceiling. They wanted the underlying result, for one thing. And they say they want the underlying result in the voting rights vote, too. And it might even be unfair to say that they don't, although they're not doing a great deal to demonstrate it, at least in the part of, both of them, really. Not doing a great deal to distinguish themselves in that regard. But, again, this was their approval of Republicans maneuvering to provide 60 votes for cloture so that they could consider that one-time weird special rule. So they both voted yes once they had the 60 votes to do it. And so, they didn't really have to, violate or even push their principles on that one. So it's not really the greatest analog, but it does show that, Republicans will allow themselves wiggle room through the use of procedural votes and just call various votes procedural rather than substantive. And then just the fact that the procedural vote controls the substantive outcome, what can you do? well, once I did that, it's beyond my control. I was just sort of hoping that they could have engineered it so that they could say, I'm just voting to table this appeal because I don't like this appeal. What happens as a result? Well, gosh, I don't know. It's not up to me. Anyway, so we got that to discuss and look forward to. And Joan McCarter's input on this and various other stories. We'll see what's on her mind, and we'll be back after a 2-minute break to discuss that. I don't think there's anything else we got time to shoehorn in here, but man, there's still a lot of long form reads I got to bring to your attention at some point. All right, late again with the music, just explaining ourselves, and we'll be back in 2 to discuss this and other things. I'm trying to sort of thumb through some other ideas here to see if there's any way we can, well, I'll have to explore that during the break. We'll see, comb through what other things have been on Joan's plate, because there might not be a whole lot of filibuster action that's new.
Hi everyone, it's me, Gil. Minimal contributor to content, but regular contributor to funding for Kagro in the morning. Let's change things up from David's so very tired plea for your contributions with a plea of my own. If you want to add your voice to the show, do it. Record your own segment using your favorite recording device and send it to David. Read an article and give your opinion. Write your own essay and read that. The sky's the limit. Well, not really. Try to keep it relatively short so David doesn't have to stress about cutting it and hurting your feelings. Join the hallowed ranks of Greg Dworkin and Joan McCarter and be part of this somewhat witty deep dive into political topics with unnecessary censoring. Lend your voice to the show by sending it to kagrox@gmail.com. KAGROX@gmail.com.
Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. All right, well, it might be kind of a busy morning this morning, but we'll see whether Joan can stop by later on. In the meantime, all I can tell you with respect to the filibuster situation is what we have from Friday, and I think largely remains unchanged. Of course, Joan updating all of you on the situation on Friday. Schumer postpones filibuster and voting rights fight to next week, just as we told you through the use of the Sahil Kapoor tweet. And she put it this way, of course, reminding us of all the various moving parts here. It was the perfect storm for the Senate on Thursday, resulting in disaster for Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's plan to have a showdown over the filibuster and voting rights and elections reforms by next Monday, Martin Luther King Day. But COVID-19, right, we knew about that. A looming winter storm, there was that too, making travel difficult. And a narcissist with rumored delusions of grandeur came crashing in to derail that plan. Which narcissist in particular with delusions of grandeur are we talking about? It could be a number of them. But the reference here through Amy Siskin's tweet on the subject, it's about the Arizonan delusions of grandeur person, Kirsten Sinema. Sinema, according to this tweet, believes she will be running for president in 2024, I am told. Amy is told. This self-styled bipartisanship she believes she speaks for will be her brand to run on as the candidate in the middle, not far left or far right. She has convinced herself this is her calling, and she has it. So, okay, that's unusual as a view to take. But okay, part of a longer thread that Amy puts together here about just trying to figure out what cinema is all about. I don't know whether she makes any progress in doing so, but at any rate, she offers us the insight that somebody says, that cinema says that she's all set for running for president. Not my favorite candidate, quite honestly. So I don't know how she'll do. Anyway, back to Joan's story. Schumer announced on the floor Thursday night that the Senate would not work over the weekend because at least one member has COVID, sidelined with a COVID diagnosis, and because of a severe winter storm forecast for the weekend. He said the Senate would, however, postpone the MLK recess to return on Tuesday to take up the House-passed message-containing voting rights legislation. We talked about how they're ping-ponging this one previously passed bill back and forth. Make no mistake, the United States Senate will, for the first time this Congress, debate voting rights legislation beginning on Tuesday. Well, okay. If no mistake has been made here, then maybe that's what's going on. And maybe she's got an eye on those proceedings right now. He promised that there will be a challenge to the filibuster, another threat to Senate Republicans and to Senators Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. If the Senate Republicans choose obstruction over protecting the sacred right to vote, as we expect them to, the Senate will consider and vote on changing the Senate rules, as has been done many times before, to allow passage of voting rights legislation, Schumer said. He continued, asking rhetorically how the Senate could allow for voter suppression laws to be enacted in the states with simple majority votes, while the U.S. Senate could not do the same to protect the right to vote, the cornerstone of our democracy. He promised, in the coming days, we will confront this sobering question, and every member will go on record. So there's at least that, going on record. The White House, Vice President Kamala Harris and others told reporters Friday morning, I understand the structure here. The White House, Vice President Kamala Harris told reporters Friday morning, is still involved. We keep fighting, she said. We are committed to seeing this through, however long it takes and whatever it takes. Harris is meeting with Democratic senators on voting rights Friday. So that's over. I don't know if I saw any particular reports about how that went, but there you go. President Joe Biden had a candid and respectful exchange of views about voting rights with Manchin and Sinema on Thursday night at the White House, after which neither of the senators commented. Given Sinema's grandstanding on the floor about preserving the Jim Crow filibuster and Manchin's cheerleading of her afterward, the outlook is not bright. But it is important to make them and every other Democrat who might be hiding behind them to make their position public. As Biden put it in his speech Tuesday, do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace? Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor? You want to be on the side of Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis? Or Jefferson Airplane, as Wren would have it, I'm sure. Anyway, and I think I called him Wren Williams at one point, or I might have called him William Wren, actually, earlier today, and he's Wren Williams, right? Okay. Well, anyway, big Jefferson Airplane fan, I'm sure. Those Democrats hiding behind Manchin and Sinema, however, might quietly appeal to Schumer to back away from that pledge. He shouldn't. It's time Republican obstruction be faced head-on and for Democrats to choose their side in public. Beyond voting rights, and speaking of Manchin, the Senate is still stymied on Build Back Better. This is the week, more than 30 million American families will begin missing those child tax credit payments that will disappear entirely for many families whose income levels kept them from previously receiving the tax credit. The outlook for that is also cloudy. Manchin appears to be insisting that if the payments continue, they be tied to work requirements. This bill is being done under budget reconciliation, one of those 160-plus filibuster carve-outs, so it doesn't require Republican votes. It does, unfortunately, require diva votes. Good point. Not D votes, diva votes. The other issue that's rising up with a February 18th deadline on government funding nearing is staving off another shutdown and trying to adopt a long-term spending measure to get the nation through the rest of the fiscal year. Democrats are fighting for actual budget bills to fund their agenda. Republicans are trying to force another long-term continuing resolution that keeps the Biden administration hobbled with Trump administration spending levels. Don't forget that that's one of the downsides of kicking the can along and just doing continuing resolutions. You continue the old budget. Democrats also want to provide paid leave and possibly another round of COVID-19 relief payments in the package, as well as expanding testing and vaccine availability, depending on how much of the previously appropriated federal money is available. Well, yeah, that's troublesome. I always forget that constantly looming in the background is the threat of government shutdown, because they never do actually finish their work. They just push things along from one crisis to another. All right, well, let's see. My guess is that Joan is just a bit tied up in keeping an eye on activity on the Senate floor, lest she miss any exciting developments in this showdown, or the latest developments, I guess, that will reveal whether or not it's going to take place at all. Okay. By the way, along the same lines, also on Friday, she provided for our reading enjoyment. The Peace Mansion and Cinema just made it that much easier for Trump to seize control. How so? During recent weeks, when President Joe Biden and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer have been building the case for the Freedom to Vote and John Lewis voting rights bills, there's also been increasing chatter about Republicans finding one election reform that they could really get behind, and that's the Electoral Count Act reform. There's been so much chatter about it, in fact, that Politico went out and polled it, finding that 55% of Americans support reforming the law that Trump used to try to overthrow the 2020 election. He didn't use it very well, by the way. It should be noted, since we're taking popular opinion, or talking popular opinion, that the same poll found majority support for every element of the Freedom to Vote Act. But that one, screw that. But now that Mitch McConnell has Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema in the bag opposing Democrats' efforts to restore full and free elections, let's just see how helpful Republicans will be in making this more discreet reform. Let's see whether the chatter fed by Republicans to their pet members of the traditional press about an election reform Republicans will support even continues. That's a good point. They might just, oh, yeah, well, you actually believe that? Well, we're not doing that either. Just like, oh, yeah, well, we'll do Build Back Better and infrastructure bill together. That's, everybody knows that they're linked. Oh, what? We're delinking them? Oh, okay. We're only doing them? All right. Well, I guess we just won't do it then. Anyway, it's not that the reform isn't needed, and it's not that they aren't a good idea, these reforms to the Electoral Count Act. The Washington Post's Greg Sargent reported this week on one of them, writing that the senators are close to completing a bill that will revise the Electoral Count Act of 1887 with legislation that would fix ambiguities in the ECA that Trump directly exploited with his wide-ranging 2020 plot. He reported that independent Maine Senator Angus King is spearheading the effort, and that there's agreement that the law as is stands as a clear and present threat to democracy. There we go. I've sort of cleaned up that sentence a little bit. The bill is supposed to be introduced in the upcoming weeks by King, along with Democratic Senators Dick Durbin and Amy Klobuchar, but not until the push for larger voting rights and elections reforms bills is over. It's very important to emphasize that this is not a solution to the voting rights issue being raised across the country, King told Sargent. And here comes Joan. Hey, good morning, Joan. How you doing?
Good morning. It's Tuesday.
Yeah, it is. Right. I thought you might have one eye on maybe on C-SPAN or whatever, something going on today. But also yesterday being a holiday, sometimes it's just one of those things. You forget. Oh, it's not Monday.
It's Tuesday, and my apologies for coming in so late.
Oh, well, that's all right. We're glad to have you. We were just reading through some of your posts from Friday to update everybody on where we stand. But maybe there's news since Friday. I haven't seen much about what they're actually planning to do, other than they pushed it from Monday to Tuesday because of COVID and snowstorm. But anything new here?
I haven't heard anything new on the COVID front. They had Brian Schatz, and I'm not sure who all else possibly out because of COVID. I haven't seen reports if there's anybody else.
Okay. Well,
Feinstein was also out, but they didn't say why.
Oh, okay. Well,
Of course,
someone should
they're
tell her
going
it's
to
Tuesday.
need all of them.
Yeah, right. But maybe treading. I don't know. It could be travel related. Could be anything. Could be she doesn't know it's Tuesday too, but for slightly different reasons. Could be. I don't know.
We're not expecting them to try to make this happen, to make, overturning the filibuster or whatever they're going to do with the filibuster. We don't expect them to try to do it today.
Oh, okay.
It's
so pushed
take
again.
up most of the week, probably. Most of the week being Tuesday to Thursday.
Right. Well, that's the only part of the week that they work in typically. All right. So I guess it could get pushed again, and no indication certainly that Manchin or Sinema are coming around on the point on which we wanted them, and also no indication that anybody's building a procedural case to give them a one-off excuse to do this either, because it may have been explored and they were just like, nah, that's not going to work for me. And it becomes too complicated. So maybe they just want a straight-ahead vote and have, though they may lose it, it would be of some value because, as you mentioned, and I didn't stop when I was reading it in one of your articles, you point out that there are other Democratic senators who might otherwise be dragging their feet and who are able to hide behind the fact that Manchin and Sinema make it look like it's impossible. So maybe you should just give up and not make me go on the record. But if I had to, I'd rather oppose changing the filibuster rules, either generally or specifically for this. But I'm under such pressure, and everybody wants to blame Manchin and Sinema. I need to, this isn't where I want to be, but I guess I'll vote yes, because why have the trouble? It's not going to happen. And I also get to vote yes, so maybe I'll do that. But then that'll just leave you in the yes category for next time. So
Right. But,
so
they're all in the yes category as far as debt limit is concerned.
Yes. Well.
That's one of the things that's even more frustrating about this. They're happy to make these carve-outs.
Yes, they do it a lot.
So.
Not often in the way that they did for the debt ceiling, but yeah, there are certainly plenty of things. And there's no convincing people like Manchin who insist that this is something that the founders wanted to do. And no matter how many times you point it out to them, no, that's not the way it is. No, it's not even that sacrosanct. There's hundreds of workarounds for the filibuster. Why don't you just, creating one more isn't going to make a big deal. Well, he doesn't care. So, okay.
There's a story in Reason, which I am not used to reading.
Right.
About how Democrats can beat a GOP filibuster without wrecking Senate rules. Have you seen this one?
I've seen not that one, but there are several. I wonder if it's about the same thing, but let's find out.
Rule 19.
Okay.
Biden-Harris. Harris, as presiding officer, can limit a Republican filibuster of voting rights legislation by enforcing Rule 19 to bar senators from speaking, quote, more than twice upon any one question in debate on the same legislative day without the leave of the Senate, which shall be determined without debate. And I'm not sure how this plays in. I've got to read the whole thing to figure out if this actually makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
it requires the Democrats to keep the Senate on the same legislative day,
yes,
which they are happy to do. They did it all of last week.
Mm-hmm.
It was Monday all week last week, which kind of helps explain how awful last week was.
That's true. But you called, and it was Monday. So
I'm gonna send this over to you.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is the existing talking filibuster idea that some people have batted around. I think Bill Scher said on Twitter, he wrote something about it today. I didn't read his either, but yes, this is the existing rule, and it might be well suited to this situation. It's usually not used to break filibusters because it's a surrender of all other business. Nothing else can happen until they literally talk themselves into submission. And it could take weeks, and you have to have no other pressing business in order to even consider using it. And that's kind of why it's sort of been left to gather dust. But It is real.
It is real. It is possible, although in the Omicron surge
Mhm.
and
Oh,
with everything else going on, I don't know how likely they are going to be to want to do it this way.
yeah. Although it's possible that the Omicron surge might help this. I mean, if it depends on who gets the COVID.
Right.
But even so, actually, it probably wouldn't matter that much, because if it knocks out the ability of people to show up and speak, well, then you call the question. The only issue is whether if you have 9 Democrats out with COVID and 2 Republicans out, then you'll lose the vote at the end.
Right.
So yeah, that's troublesome.
As of right now, the only strategy I can see at play is shame, which,
okay.
you know,
I've heard of that. Seems like one
we're
of those
talking
dumb
about
archaic
trying to
things.
shame Republicans or Manchin and Cinema. I don't see that as possible.
Yeah. It's not usually, your first line of defense with any politician, but yeah, not these guys. All right. Well, let's see. You know what? Here, let me send you the Bill Scher piece in return. So maybe if you don't want to read Reason,
Okay.
you could read Bill Scher, which is
Read that
at least slightly better than Reason. Yeah. Okay.
Slightly better than Reason, yes.
He can be nettlesome, but
He can be very meddlesome.
at any rate. But yeah, this is an existing possibility, and it's the sort of thing that you might be able to get a consensus among Democrats to say, all right, we really are at a place where we could conceivably afford to stop everything else and just say, look, voting rights, this thing has to go through or it's all for naught, but you have to mean it. I mean, really, there no more nominations, no more appropriations. Of course, with the government shutdown looming, that's a bad thing.
February
you got to take
18th,
care of that.
yeah. It's going to be, can they wait them out? And can waiting them out finally force Manchin and Sinema? Can anything force Manchin and Sinema to come around? After Sinema's performance last week, I don't see what it would be.
Yeah. Well, that's, I guess, why they're entertaining this thing. They wouldn't have to change their stance on the filibuster. They would just simply have to wait and then be called upon to vote up or down eventually on the voting rights legislation, which they say they support. And I don't think they're going to surprise anybody at the last minute and say no to it if they were to do this. But, yeah, there's some other tinkering around the edges that they probably ought to do as well. Like I did see something we discussed last week, the suggestion that they ought to change the rules around the automatic granting of a quorum call at the suggestion of any senator that there isn't a quorum, which is used to bridge the gaps between the long speeches that senators would have to make in order to conduct a talking filibuster. And if somebody can't keep going and they need relief and the other person who's supposed to go next isn't there, they just call for a quorum call and sit. Right. But if they couldn't do that, or they say, under these circumstances, when we're invoking Rule 19, no automatic quorum calls or anything like that, that would require a rules change. I don't know whether Manchin and Sinema would be okay with that, but the Manchin, who says he's for the talking filibuster, if you really want to have one of those, there's just a little tinkering about quorum calls. You don't even like quorum calls. Come on. What do you say?
Nobody likes quorum calls. They're a waste of time.
Yeah. Well,
it's embarrassing when people turn on the Senate and they just see an empty floor.
Yeah, it is. Even if they like classical music, it's an embarrassment. So, but yeah, it shouldn't be working that way. And, at any rate, hopefully they can make a change like that. That would really put the pressure on and make it so that, look, you guys got to stand on your feet and do it. And, yeah, as long as they keep it the same legislative day, which is one of those magical things that they can do by, I think, refusing to adjourn at the end of the day, but rather just recessing instead. So the Senate calendar remains stuck on the same day. And if it's the same day, you can't make more than 2 speeches in that day. And it doesn't really matter how long your speeches are. So sometimes when you just relieve somebody for 5 minutes or so, well, then you've lost one of your two chances. And if Democrats just say, well, we're not going to speak, and Republicans each make their two speeches, then eventually no one who's eligible to be recognized to speak will rise, and the chair says, well, no one else wanting to speak to the question. We call the question, and it's a simple majority vote passage. But it might take you 2 weeks, 3 weeks to run it out. If every one of 50 Republican senators opts to give two speeches and each one of them can speak for 15 hours, you're there for a long time. That
It's
is
a
in
gamble.
the books. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what else they've got at this point, though.
No telling.
Does doing this wear the other two down to the point they say, all right, fine, we'll do the carve out?
Maybe. Yeah, I got no idea. By the way, if everybody speaks twice for 15 hours and there are 50 Republican senators, it's 62 and a half days of speaking around the clock. They'd have to stay open around the clock. So we would run into, at this point, you would run into the government shutdown. You need to pass some sort of, either the full appropriations package or another CR, because you can't deviate from this business. You can't do anything else. It's the only thing on your plate, and you can't switch topics. So that's bad news. And you can see why it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
If there were literally 50 of them that were willing to do this, and considering even if they can only do half of that, right, that's still 30 days.
On the other hand, it would be sort of interesting to see them put that kind of pressure on Romney, Murkowski, Collins, Porter.
Yes. Right. You have to stand here and hold up your end of the bargain in order for this to work. Are you willing to do that? They might not be willing to make those speeches.
They might not.
It's not a defense of the filibuster
for them to stand up. And I mean, how many
That's
times can they say federal takeover of state responsibilities without looking like, what they are, white supremacists?
Yeah. And every senator you can peel off from that and say, look, this is not about the filibuster. There's a straight up or down vote coming at the end of this on voting rights. Are you going to do two 15-hour speeches in defense of this?
Particularly those 17 sitting senators now who voted with the majority, and what year was it that they last reauthorized the Voting Rights Act?
Oh, I forgot that there are that many. Yes.
I think it's either 14 or 17. I think it's 17.
Okay. Well, look, any one that you can peel off is somewhere between, I guess, I don't know, say 15 and 40 hours worth of filibustering that you can get rid of and take off the plate. The sooner they exhaust themselves, the better. It would be better if there wasn't the looming shutdown again in the way, but maybe they can take care of that. Maybe they're not going to do that because they're just not, these guys are very reluctant to undertake something like this. But this is the sort of extraordinary circumstance where you would try it. You can see why it's never tried for anything else, routine business.
Right.
And why the filibuster is so successful in screwing things up even on routine business, because you're not going to do this. But it's worth studying.
At least there's going to be debate. I mean, kudos to Schumer and Pelosi for figuring out how to force an actual debate, how to overcome the motion to proceed anyway.
Yes, right, true, and get the thing on the floor. At least you'll have a debate about the actual thing as opposed to a debate about whether or not to start debate, which is also a good way of highlighting the absurdity of the filibuster. But, you want to focus on the voting rights right now. And, all right, it was well engineered that they were able to come up with a way to do it.
That's pretty much it for Congress this week. It's going to be this.
Well, that ought to be the focus. And that makes it easy because we're about out of time. So,
But I have to make sure you saw the Neil Gorsuch news.
Which is what? No, I guess I haven't. What has he done now?
Ina Totenberg reports, and it has since been confirmed, that Chief Justice John Roberts asked everybody to mask up because of Omicron. Gorsuch is the only one who said no, which is
wow.
why Sotomayor has been coming in remotely, because she has diabetes, and it's extremely dangerous for her to be exposed. And there's Neil Gorsuch, who she sits next to.
What a nice guy.
Happily spewing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't realize that there had been an explicit request to do that. I did see them circulating something that I guess Gorsuch had written some time ago that had an ironic quote in it. I'll see if I can dig that thing up. But just it's interesting that just as a matter of collegial politeness, I'm asking you, could you please? The rest of them are. But we got to return to civility. Something, yada, yada.
Even Clarence Thomas.
Wow. So, yeah. I don't know. Gorsuch, bit of an outlier there. I got to find that quote because it was kind of funny. It was unintentionally ironic.
It was a George Washington quote.
Okay.
It was, and I think I have it, if I can get to it quickly enough.
Tick, tick, tick.
Tick, tick, tick.
Yeah, I don't know. This is not the time to be doing it. I'll find it. I've seen it, but it was something about, you shouldn't be bedewing the faces of your people by spewing basically about literally getting in people's faces and spraying on them.
Spewing and spitting. Yeah.
Even George Washington knew about droplets, and he had wooden teeth.
Bedew no man's face with your spittle by approaching too near him when you speak.
Yeah, there you go. Civility. Thanks, George. Good catch. Good Googling there.
You have been listening to Kagro.
We'll catch you again next Tuesday then, I guess.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for coming by. All right, we appreciate it. And, of course, time now for us to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I won't stick around and bedew his face at all. He gets to do this remotely as well. And as you know, always an esoteric collection of stories from around the country and around the world. Next.